Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I will be going over Gideon the Ninth. So I just want to say right off the back, if you love this book or even like it, or you can't stand people disliking the book and it's not allowed, this review is not for you. Because to be honest, I really dislike this book. I am not going to necessarily go so far as to say, like, I hate it and I think it's trash, but I just genuinely have never thought it was just that good of a book while I was reading through it. So I will say, on my part, I may be slightly biased. This was actually my first book that I have ever picked up in sci-fi. I have always wanted to get into sci-fi, but I have just really struggled with it because I will admit I'm not super into the space aspect of it. So if you're going to compare like Star Trek to Lord of the Rings, 9 times out of 10 I would be a Lord of the Rings because I like the high fantasy versus the sci-fi-ness of Star Trek. Don't get me wrong, I think Star Trek's great, and I do like Star Trek. Not that I'm like, yes, I gotta watch every series and movies, but I would pick Lord of the Rings over Star Trek any day though. I'll just admit. So I picked it up wanting to give sci-fi a chance for the first time ever. But I guess in movies I've given it a chance. But in terms of reading, this was I just wanted to try sci-fi and see if I would like it. And as I really enjoy queer books, this was the one that first caught my attention. I don't ever really see queer sci-fi books. I still like the romance in it too. So for me, when I saw the lesbian necromancers explore a haunted gothic palace in space, I was like, oh, sign me up, Lesbian necromancers, I'm all for this. And that is actually what caught my attention on this book. So I definitely wanted to give sci-fi a chance. And I think that was a mistake on my part. So I don't think a book like this is for first-time sci-fi readers, and I will completely admit that. And I don't mean it in the sense of like, oh, it's like such a hard read and whatever. I don't necessarily think it's a hard read. I don't necessarily think it's an easy read either. To me, I just feel very neutral about that aspect of it. But I just in general don't think this book is a good starting book for new sci-fi people or a good introduction into the sci-fi genre in general, whether or not there's romance in it. I'm talking about for just sci-fi. This, as in terms of Gideon as well, this was actually, I think, the first book that I DNF'd. I don't ever DNF books. I can at least even if I don't really enjoy a book, I can at least keep reading through it enough to finish it. Flame in the Mist by Renee Adaya is a good example of that. I almost DNF'd it, but it was whatever enough that I could at least skim through it and get the main point of what happens. This was not like that. I didn't even finish skimming through it because I was just so uninterested in the book at the point I stopped. It was around page I wouldn't say 143, yeah, chapter 13 and 143. I actually stopped because chapter 12, Gideon was commanded to be silent. She couldn't say anything, and then she was just going around the palace or whatever, and nothing really happened. And for me, that was just come on now, really? I literally just I don't even remember what I thought at the time, but I had a moment of I can't do this anymore. I can't even bring myself to trudge the way through the rest of the book because it is literally just so uninteresting to me. And there's just so much just BS of nothing in there. So that's actually why I stopped reading it. So now I'm going to get into why I stopped it. First off, when you open the book, it's just a lot of description and just jargon. I am not necessarily opposed to even having a lot of description, but even this was just too much for me. Like, there are pages in the book where it's like you don't even have a conversation. It's literally just pages and pages and pages of just descriptions about like whatever the hell. And at some point I think it loses the setting aspect of it, because you're describing so much. At least this is how I felt, especially when she got off the planet. There's just so much description of just everything and nothing to me, that I was like, okay, so what exactly is the setting? Like, where are we? Like, what's going on? It just lost me really quickly, and this is coming from somebody who I genuinely like description. I like being able to visualize it in my head, but it's at some point it's like, okay, I get it, like, please move on. I just want to start getting to the actual story. To me, I found it to be just like a lot of nonsense, and I just found myself really uninterested after a while. The second one, and I'm gonna kind of, this is like 2 and 3, the characters. Now, I personally didn't find Gideon appealing. I actually thought she was annoying. I know she's described as like, oh, yeah, like a badass, and like almost like I guess you could say like a boss babe. I don't necessarily think that is 100% accurate, but she's a badass bitch, and for me it's like, I personally find her just kind of annoying. Like, I will admit, I don't like mean characters. I don't like mean main characters. I feel like I have seen this more recently, where authors try and do these, strong female characters who take no shit. And I am all for that. Don't get me wrong. I love to see strong female leads. But then I think it gets to a point where it's like, you're not like a badass, strong woman. You're just kind of like an asshole. Like, you're just mean. You're mean and you're annoying. And that's what I found with Gideon at some point. I didn't find her to be this, strong badass character. I personally found her to be quite dislikable, and it really kind of threw me out very early on too. So I tried to give her a chance, but I wasn't feeling her character at all. I'm not going to say like I think she's the worst female character out there. I don't believe that by any means, but it just, her personality was not for me. And that brings me to my next issue with this book. There are way too many characters. So when we open up the book, in the beginning, we have a list of houses and all the characters, or all the people who are part of the houses. There's 9 houses, and there's multiple characters in each house. So each house has at least like the leader and then the knight. I don't know like the actual name for it, but that's just what I'm gonna go with for now. So you have just this laundry list of characters, and a lot of them do come into play in the very beginning of the book, and it's just like, holy shit, dude, like, am I gonna have to remember all of these people? Oh my god. And that actually is where I just kind of got frustrated and really done with the book. Because we have so many characters and so many houses, I found myself flipping back and forth constantly between like the first pages with all the lists and with all the characters and the houses and shit, and then like back to the story. So this book was just like constantly a flip back and forth for me of, oh, who's this person again, what do they do, like, and it just, I got, at some point, I just got so annoyed with it that I was like, whatever, I don't care. I don't care enough about these characters to like actually keep trying to sit here and remember who they are and like what house they belong to. I just found myself like, I stopped caring at some point and just whatever. I don't like feeling like that in a book. Like that's not a good feeling for me. To me, that's a red flag. So, and that also brings me another aspect tied in with this. The names. Oh my God. The names of this book. Which I think is actually funny. I'm going to say this because I think I butchered a lot from Last Quarters of Olympus, but the names were just wild to me. I do try to get names correct. I do read a lot of foreign books, Thai books. I do like Danmei books, so Chinese BL and stuff. And for me, getting the names right is really important. And that is also why it became a flip book for me. You know, every time I saw a name, I'd have to flip back and go, okay, how is this pronounced? I'm all for like different, you know, wild names and stuff like that. This was just like, WTF, man, like what are the names in this? I found them at some point to be just stupid, and again, which also led me to just being really uninterested in the book. I don't like feeling like this, but at some point I just kind of hit, man, I don't care for any of these characters, so I just like don't care to get their names right, because it is just like whatever. It's not a good feeling having that while reading a book. My last issue with this book, part of this I think is just me. I'm not a very character-driven person. I'm a plot-driven person. I stopped because there's just so much of nothing happening for me to even motivate me to continue the book. But I stopped when she forced Gideon to be silent for what I guess you could maybe frame as a whole chapter. I didn't read past that, so maybe it was multiple chapters, but like I said, I didn't care. Gideon had to be silent. So we have Gideon, who is just going around the complex, the castle, the whatever, and kind of just interacting with some of the characters and listening to conversations and what have you. She just doesn't really interact with them. And again, I understood because of her inability, because of her master. So, and to me, that was just done. You know, I felt like I had read just a lot of chapters of just nothing going on, and I was just fed up at that point. You know, it's like, I need you to give me something to bring me back in the novel. I have characters that I don't care about. I'm having just so much description that I don't care about. I have a main character who is just uncompelling. I find her mean and rude, who doesn't even know what a sink is, apparently. And I was just like, I'm done. So I have read a little bit about the plot online. Apparently it's like maybe the halfway, 3/5 or 3/4 point where this book becomes a murder mystery. So, and I really dislike it, so I'm actually kind of glad I stopped. From what I saw, all of these characters that we get introduced to, that we get those dumbass houses introduced to, literally don't even matter at the end of the day, which is also like really stupid in my opinion. Like, or I guess I should say it's just really frustrating, because it's like, here's all this information that we need to remember, and oh, just kidding, it actually doesn't matter because they're all murdered anyway. So I don't like mystery at all. It's never been a genre for me. You know, I know my family is really into it, and I've read some stuff on it, but it is just, to me, I find it one of the more interesting stuff. I've never been a person who enjoys 48-hour mystery or anything like that. Those criminal shows, it is just, that genre has never been for me. So, and then when I found out after, you know, putting the book down for a while, and it's like, man, I don't know if I continue this. When I read through some of that, it was just like, oh, hell no. Like, you are not going to sit here and give me all these characters and then turn into some like dumbass mystery and then have everyone, you know, killed off and whatnot. I was kind of furious. So I wasn't furious, but it was just like, I will admit, I was just kind of annoyed at that point, because I felt like this book had just wasted so much of my time. I saw like how good of reviews it got and how highly people lifted this book up, and I was like, yes, I am ready for the lesbian necromancy in space. And then after that, it's like, are you kidding me? You just wasted my time with this nothingness. So, I mean, it was genuinely very frustrating. And like I said earlier, I am not one to DNF books. Like, it is exceedingly rare for me to DNF a book, but this one was just like, what the hell? Like, I even now, you know, I think it has like a 4.22 rating on Good Stars, and I'm just like, how? Like, how does this book have such a good rating? I don't get it. I can genuinely like read stuff that I don't like that I think are good books. You know, Jacelyn Osborne is like that. She does the series. So I got, what is it, like, sent off to Fantasy World or whatever, the Transmigration. series. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the correct term. But, and she actually does the Fallen Angel series. Like, I've read a bunch of her works. Is it, I think I can admit, like, even though I'm not that interested in the books, I actually do think they're good. This is not that case, though. I just don't think this is good. And it just blows my mind that this has just so much praise to it. And you know what? If you like the book, go you. More power to anybody who likes the book. So I don't want to shame anybody. When I say these things, I don't want to shame anybody and being like, well, what the hell, man? I can't believe you like this. Like, no, if people like the book, go for it. I love plenty of stuff that people hate and vice versa. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think people can like whatever book that they like, with some nuance in that statement, but people can like to read whatever they like to read. And it is completely okay for it to not be the stuff that I like to read. And there's nothing wrong with that. I definitely was like, looking forward to lesbian, and gothic sci-fi or whatever it is. Yeah, a gothic palace, and it was just a huge letdown at the end of the day. And I have read books that have been big letdowns that I finished reading. Jay Kristoff is one. I read his first of the Nevernight series, and I remember finishing that and was just like, I can't believe I just finished reading this, because I thought it was actually like so bad, and I have all 3 of the books. So, but this one, I mean, this didn't even make it to that point. This was definitely one of, I think, just the most disappointing books I have ever read, and I didn't even finish it. So I definitely think the way this book is advertised is not at all what it is like. So I think that's what my main point is. It is definitely advertised as one way, and I just don't agree. Anyway, that was my review of Gideon the NOPE. So, I'm actually going to be selling this book to my local bookstore. So I don't ever plan on picking this book up again. I will not read it. I am not even going to attempt. There are no second chances. So I did this book so I can finally get rid of it. And I'm so happy about that, because I am tired of having it on my shelf. It is a waste of space. Anyway, thank you so much for anybody who watched it. I appreciate it. Again, if you like the book, awesome. If you don't, also cool, whatever, at the end of the day. So anyway, have a rest of the good whatever. So bye, y'all. So there actually is one more thing I want to add as well. So I feel like this book tries to be, edgy and hardcore kind of vibes. It wasn't, in my opinion. This book actually reminded me of myself in high school, because I very much love the punk rock style. And this reminds me of when I was going through that of I really want to look dark and gothic, and I wasn't into makeup, but I need the chains and the skinny jeans and stuff. How can I do that? It really reminds me of that time of trying to be something I wasn't. Not that I'm completely not into that. I still love that style, but it was trying to fit in a specific way that just didn't work for what it is. I don't think it's edgy or any of that. It's not. So that's also kind of why I'm I find it just meh and just silly at the end of the day. So anyway, that's it.